What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to show off another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I want to show off today is Battlin Boxer. There's a few different versions of this deck and different ways you can play this deck, so I like to call this one the Kaiser control build. It'll make a lot of sense once we actually get into this deck profile. I think this deck is really cool. It has some very strong plays it can do, even though it is a control deck. And just in general, Battlin Boxer Lead Yoke is a house of a card to get over, especially paired with some trap cards. But let's get straight into this deck profile, and hopefully you guys will enjoy. So, starting off with the monsters, we play 3 copies of Battlin Boxer Switch Hitter. When it's normal summon, you can target a Battlin Boxer monster in your graveyard and special summon that target, but you can't special summon during the turn you activate this effect except for Battlin Boxer monsters, which isn't a problem. It'll make more sense once we actually show off that lead yoke, but that is the monster you're going into 90% of the time. After that, we play 3 copies of Battlin Boxer Glassjaw. This is a 2000 attack normal summon, level 4. When it's targeted for an attack, it's destroyed, and when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, including its own effect right there when it is attacked, you can target a Battlin Boxer monster in your graveyard, except itself, except Glassjaw, and add it to your hand, so it's a way to recur your resources. After that, 3 copies of Battlin Boxer Headgeared. On normal summon, it lets you foolish a Battlin Boxer monster from deck, which is good. If you already have some in graveyard, you're able to send the Glassjaw and add one of them back. It also has the effect that once per turn, this face-up card cannot be destroyed by battle. So that's very important when we get to Kaiser Coliseum, and it's one of the few reasons I think this is a deck that can main Kaiser Coliseum, where usually I'm very, very against it. It'll make more sense also with some of the traps and things. But yeah, so that's why I really enjoy that card. And then 3 copies of Battlin Boxer Sparer. If you control a Battlin Boxer monster, you can special summon this card from the hand. That special summon effect is not once per turn. But if you do that, you cannot conduct your battle phase for the rest of the turn, which, again, isn't a problem if you can set up your board. That's it for the main Battlin Boxer monsters. After that, I choose to play 1 copy of Battlin Boxer Counterpunch. This one, during the damage step of either player's turn when a Battlin Boxer monster you control is attacking or being attacked, you banish this card from your graveyard or hand and make that monster gain 1000 attack until the end phase. Because we're trying to play a slow game and really just protect our one monster, this is very, very clutch, especially, like I said, if you have Kaiser Coliseum that we'll talk about in a bit, and something like a headgear that needs to be attacked over multiple times. It just allows you to put your opponent in this weird position where it's even harder to out your board, especially if you go first and open the Kaiser, because then, they can't make Xyz like H.A.T or something to out it. So really, really good card. There's times I wish I played more, but I think for the sake of this deck, you have to just play 1 copy of Photon Thrasher. It's an extender, which can be important, and also under Kaiser Coliseum, a 2100 is pretty hard to get over on just normal summons. And then a very interesting card is 1 copy of Blue Flame Swordsman. Once per turn during either player's battle phase, you target a different warrior monster you control. This card will lose some attack, I believe it's 600, and then the other monster will gain it. But the relevant part of this effect is when this card you control is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, you're able to banish this card and summon a fire warrior monster from your graveyard. So if your graveyard's already filled and you summon this, and then you have Kaiser Coliseum or something, if they beat over this, you can then banish and summon another monster. So if they thought that, just getting over your 1 monster was going to allow them to then main phase 2 start comboing, this kind of puts them in that position where now they have to still get over it, and with not being able to summon more monsters, that can usually be very difficult. And lastly, this is kind of a control-y type deck, so it plays a little slower, so to give it some draw power and a way to play against combo decks, we also play 2 copies of Max C. I think 2 is perfect because you want to see traps and you want to see your main card, so you don't want to be like opening multiple Max C, so 2 is perfect. 2 copies of Kaiser Coliseum. Pretty much this makes so your opponent can't have more monsters than you control. So for example, if you go first, activate Kaiser Coliseum, normal summon 1 monster, your opponent can now only control 1 monster. The reason this card's bad going second in a lot of decks is because if your opponent has a full established board, when you activate this, it's not good because it's not going to get rid of your opponent's monsters and make them send until they have the same amount the way other cards would. So Kaiser Coliseum, you want to see it, but you don't want to see too many, and that's why 2 copies is perfect. Like I said, just because of how strong some of the monsters you control are, and because of what a house lead yoke is, Kaiser Coliseum is really good, and playing a lot of traps that can break your opponent's board and then make this card live again is very good, and I enjoy it a lot. 2 copies of Forbidden Lance, you want your normal summons and effects to go through, so it's very important. And 2 copies of MST, it's just a way to out certain cards, and having just a variety so you'll see multiple different cards and not multiples of the same card is really important in this deck. For one-ofs, we play 1 Rhoda, 1 Foolish. This is the one card I would consider cutting, and it's Battlin Boxer's Spirits. Basically, you send the top card of your deck to the graveyard and target a Battlin Boxer monster in your graveyard and special summon that target in defense position. You can only use it once per turn, but we're only playing 1 anyways. This deck plays 41, and like I said, I think I would probably cut this because you don't really want to be milling your traps or anything, and it feels like a late game card that just isn't great, so I'd probably cut that, along with the fact we already are playing 1 Soul Charge. Switch Hitter, being able to summon things back from graveyard, is, you already have enough recursion. You're not making like crazy big pushes. You're more so playing the control game like I mentioned. So I would probably just cut the Spirits like I mentioned and just play the 1 Soul Charge. And then also 1 Dark Hole to clear boards, and Lead Yoke is protected basically, so this only hurts your opponent. Moving on to the traps, I chose to play 2 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. The reason I chose this over Vanity's Emptiness is because this is kind of what I wish Kaiser Coliseum did, which is clear out your opponent's board if they have multiple different types on the field. So what Rivalry is you can only control, both players can only control 1 type of monsters and send the rest of the face up to the graveyard. So like I said, all your monsters are warriors, and going second, this card isn't as bad because, for example, if your opponent's playing something like H.A.T that plays the fairies in the form of artifacts, or insects, plants because of the trap tricks, or the hands being, different types, it really shuts your opponent off of things. Obviously, there's decks like Sylvan's that's mostly plants, or Dragon Rulers that's mostly dragons, or Bujins that's, I believe, Beast Warriors, but it also plays some other typings. So, some decks can play around this, but backed up with the rest of the traps and just Kaiser Coliseum and other things, it's just a very solid card. I would definitely say side Vanity's Emptiness, but in terms of maining it, I do like Rivalry a bit more, because the decks that are, the same 1 typing, usually this deck can just clear through. It's more so things like hands are really scary for this deck, or, Exciton, which can be hard for a lot of decks to go into because it's a fiend. So Rivalry just does everything. 2 copies of Fiendish Chain and 2 copies of Breakthrough. Again, just having variety is really nice in this deck, so you see multiples, but not multiples of the same, in a sense. 2 copies of Wiretap. This is a grindy deck. You're already playing lances to help protect your monsters and MSTs, so Wiretap is the next best type of trap, or I should say trap removal in a sense. 1 Torrential, 1 Bottomless, 1 Compulse, 1 Blackhorn to, prevent against those extra deck monsters, because what can hurt this deck is if your opponent is able to get into an Honor Arc or an Exciton, so that's really good. And then 1 Warning to round out the main deck. So moving on to the extra deck, like I said, there's only a couple cards in the extra deck that really even come up, and one of the main ones, or I should say the main one, is Battlin Boxer Lead Yoke. What this card is it needs 2 Battlin Boxer monsters, and if a Battlin type Boxer monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you detach a material from this card, and then you detach it instead of destroying them. And then also when an Xyz material is detached from this card, it gains 800 attack. So this can get up to 3,800, and protected with, say, Kaiser, Colosseum, Rivalry, and other trap cards. This card is just really, really hard to out, because they basically have to out it 3 times before killing it. And it has the protection for your other Battlin Boxer monsters. It does everything the deck needs. And it's a pain to get over this card. It's, like I said, the best card in the extra deck. After that, 1 copy of Karangorian. This is just changing targeting, so if your opponent does have like an MST or an Ignition or something to pop your Floodgate type cards, you can just redirect it and make it even harder to get over. 1 Ragna Zero to be able to get pluses against decks. 1 Blade Armor Ninja, being a double attacker to end games if you need to. 1 copy of Gandiva. It needs 2 warrior type monsters, and once per turn, when a level 4 or lower monster or monsters is special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, except during the damage step, you detach an Xyz material and destroy that special summon monster or monsters. 1 copy of Honor Arc. 1 Excalibur to just have a really big body that is, again, hard to get over. 1 Heartland Draco. This is really funny with Kaiser Colosseum because they won't be able to target it for an attack, which makes it even harder to clear and lower your monsters unless they have a specific card effect. And if you have something like a Lance to stop that, or a Breakthrough to protect if it's a monster, it's just really difficult, and this can technically do 4,000 damage over the course of 2 turns. 1 Exciton, 1 Lavalval Chain. Other than Lead Yoke, this is probably your most important Xyz monster, just being able to dump your glass straws and getting your resources back. 1 copy of Dweller, 1 Gaga Cowboy to end games, as well as it's a warrior, so under Rivalry you can still do that and out your opponent's things. There's a handful of other warriors, I just didn't point it out in the extra deck, so if you don't go for Lead Yoke and you're under your own Rivalry, you're completely fine. Also, your MSTs can turn off your Rivalry if need be, so that's cool too. And lastly, 1 Rhapsody in Berserk. But that is it for this deck profile. Like I said, there are other versions of Battlin Boxer, and this is just the version I think is best. There are some more like kind of combo variants and some more of the heavier on spells and just focusing on Lead Yoke plus other monsters, but I like the controlled version of this, and in general right now with so much artifact trap tricks or H.A.T in general and Geargia seeing play, I like to play a more control style of this deck. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like on this video, comment any questions you have or videos you want to see in the future, make sure you're subscribed and sharing the videos with your friends. I really do appreciate it. And anyways guys, I will see you in the next video.